The government of California is forcing landlords to go without 3 months of rent as they refuse to pay out rental assistance money. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of California. Now, as many people know, the eviction moratorium in California is still going on to this day, yet they've stopped taking applications for the rental assistance program. So they put the landlords in a situation where, hey, you can no longer get rental assistance, but the eviction moratorium isn't over yet. So for the next 3 months until July, landlords have to keep these tenants in their units who are being protected by the eviction moratorium, but they have no way of getting any rental assistance money. Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, basically, they've screwed landlords over, and now they really have gone into this unconstitutional taking, like I've been saying, okay? So this is absolutely ridiculous situation. It is the reason why I never believed that rental assistance programs were the right move, and it's exactly what I've been saying when it comes to these being unconstitutional eviction moratoriums, okay? So it's a complete awful situation for landlords, and the small landlords in particular, because they don't have the money to be able to survive long term without their rental income, especially in a place with extremely high housing costs. They're trying to make their mortgage payments. They just can't make it in a lot of cases, okay, unless they get rent. And when you tell the tenant they don't have to pay, and then you say you're not paying either, well, who do you think is paying? It's the landlord. The landlord is now the homeless shelter for this tenant who doesn't have any money. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. What do you think of a rental assistance program that runs out of money before the end of an eviction moratorium? So basically putting landlords in this horrible situation where they have to go 3 months without getting a rent payment and no possibility of rental assistance or anything. I mean, I think it's nuts. I think it's crazy. I think that they should sue. And, obviously they already have sued in many different localities all throughout California, and they've sued the state. But the unfortunate fact is that those cases haven't gone anywhere. They hit the Ninth Circuit, which is one of the most liberal appeals courts in the entire country, and they can't get their case heard. I mean, they lose. And to me, it seems like it's obviously an unconstitutional taking of private property for public use without just compensation. It seems 100% obvious. And I'm sure that if it ever got to the Supreme Court, they would see the same. But, who knows if it ever will. And at that point, how many landlords will have already been put into financial ruin? So this article is coming from abc7news.com, and it says, California eviction moratorium and state rent assistance both ending. Sort of. Anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. Any renter in California who has been unable to pay rent since April will be in danger of being evicted by the end of June. The state agency, which runs the rental assistance program, says it will only cover unpaid rents through March 31st of this year. That's bad for news for anyone still unable to pay their landlord. So you see the problem immediately, right? They're like, oh, well, we're only covering unpaid rents through March 31st. The problem is it's May right now, okay? So if it's May, they're not covering April, they're not covering May, they're not covering June. So there's 3 months right there that they said they're not covering, but it says that the eviction moratorium, the renters won't be in danger of being evicted until the end of June. So you realize, hey, wait a second, these don't add up. This doesn't add up. You're telling landlords they have to take this loss for these 3 months instead of ending the eviction moratorium at the same time that the rental assistance program ended. Or, maybe it should have been the opposite. The eviction moratorium should have ended before the end of the rental assistance program, Or maybe there should have just never been an eviction moratorium in the first place. But since there is one in place, right, for now, the landlords could have at least been paid or compensated by the government for the money that they're owed, since the government created this problem. Prim Valverde and her husband Gilbert haven't been able to pay the rent since the fall, when Gilbert suffered a stroke while in the hospital recovering from COVID-19. They are two of 208,000 people who are still waiting for their application to be processed for rental assistance. Unfortunately, the state says it will only pay the rent for the months prior to the application deadline of March 31st. My whole world went upside down. My husband is the sole provider, Prim said. I mean, what can you imagine if that person that takes care of your whole family is in the hospital and might die? So, you want to feel sympathy for the tenants, right? But then when you really think about it, what is the difference between COVID-19 and any other medical problem that could have put this gentleman in the hospital, okay? So let's say he had just had a heart attack and he hadn't been able to work, and this was before the pandemic. Would he have still been expected to pay the rent then? Absolutely. Okay? It doesn't matter what the medical condition is that caused you to be in the hospital. Yes, it's unfortunate. And yes, some landlords will work with you and help you get through that sort of situation, but we cannot be expected to keep you in our units forever while, well, it's been 2 years since you paid rent, and, your husband, he's in long-term care. He's in a assisted living facility, but I'm just going to let you stay in here not paying. No. A landlord has to run their business. Okay, they have to pay their bills, and unfortunately, your husband did suffer during the pandemic. But guess what? How long is the landlord supposed to be able to, prop you up and pay for you to live there? I don't think the landlord should have to at all, personally, okay? I think that either you get some assistance from the government, rental assistance money to help you pay your bills, or you go have to find somewhere else to live because you can't afford to live there, okay? It's not the responsibility of the landlord to make sure that you have housing that you can afford if your husband, who's the sole provider, loses his job or becomes disabled or, whatever. Okay? That's just the truth, and I think that too many people think that landlords are supposed to be like social service providers, and it's just not the case. Lorraine Lopez from the Western Center on Law and Poverty explains the situation. So folks are now being left pretty much being in the cold once the application closed, Lopez said. Her group has filed a lawsuit on behalf of tenants' rights advocates, saying the state is violating the law by not providing up to a full 18 months of rental assistance. If they have not yet exhausted their 18 months of assistance, they should still be allowed to receive all of that 18 months of assistance, even if it extends beyond March 31st, 2022, Lopez said. Now, I don't know anything about, that part of the issue, right? That has nothing to do with landlords. That has to do with the tenants and the government and the rules that the government has put in place. But what it does show me, though, is that once tenants start receiving these entitlements, right, they start to expect them. They start to believe that they deserve them. Okay, this is part of the reason why I'm so anti socialist programs, because if you get to the point where you are dependent upon these programs from the government in order to pay your rent, it is very, very hard to go back to where you are taking care of yourself again. Okay, and if you create a large population of people who are dependent upon the government, a lot of them will never be able to go back to being able to take care of themselves. And that is awful. That is absolutely awful. Okay. They have few options, unfortunately, and that's one of the things that we've been prognosticating since the beginning of the pandemic, Lopez said. Once protections actually expired, that this is when the eviction cliff was going to come. The tenant rights group behind the lawsuit against the stats are Alliance for Californians for Community Empowerment and Strategic Action for a Just Economy. Those facing eviction are advised to seek help. Yeah, well, they have to do what's best for them, but, this is a landlord channel, okay? And there are so many tenants that are being put in a bad situation, and if you are a landlord and you choose to, be sympathetic and take that loss, that's one thing, right? But being forced to take the loss, being forced to basically put yourself into financial ruin, regardless of your situation. That's the one thing that I get very annoyed with. They never ask the landlords, what is your situation? So you think, oh, well, they make the assumption landlords are rich. Landlords got tons of money. They'll be just fine if they don't get paid their rent. And when the truth comes out that a lot of us are small, mom and pop landlords, one, maybe two properties at most, that's probably, 75% plus of landlords only own one property. Okay. And most of them are middle class. Some of them are even lower class. Maybe they inherited a house from their parents who passed away or something, and they're just renting it out. So you have a lot of low income landlords. You have middle income landlords. And yeah, there are some wealthy ones too, but they don't make up the majority. So, it just blows my mind that, they expect all landlords to be able to just swallow the losses. So yeah, I'm not feeling it. And it's bad for the landlords out in California have to take 3 months of loss where they don't even have the opportunity to get the rental assistance.